All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and it's Wednesday, so we're going to highlight a bunch of cool fringe meta, off meta decks that have done well in online tournaments this week. We do this every Wednesday. It's a great way to highlight some decks that aren't necessarily, top tier meta contending decks. It's always a nice refresh, but also highlight the players and the tournaments that go on throughout the week. The PMPT Tournament Series is the largest weekly Pokemon Pocket Tournament Series, but there are other tournaments throughout the week, so I like to kind of give them a shout out. That being said, this weekend, there is no PMPT tournament, at least in the traditional sense. This weekend is going to be the Invitational Tournament for our second season. So, that being said, go and check in the Discord. If you are anywhere in the top 256 players on our season standings, you will qualify and be invited to participate in this weekend's PMPT Invitational. It's going to be it's going to be really exciting. We're going to live stream it on the channel, and it's basically a way to wrap up the season. So, that also being said, today we didn't get any trailer or announcement about the next expansion coming to Pokemon Pocket B3, but we are expecting that to come either tomorrow or Thursday, and that's going to be very exciting. When it does come out, you will hear from me, and we will talk about it and all of the new cards that get announced. So that should be coming up soon. So anyway, nothing to register for unless you're invited to the tournament this weekend, but stay tuned because the next PMPT tournament after this weekend, excuse me, is going to be the first one of the new season, and that'll always be very exciting. Anyway, let's just dive right into the deck lists today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys, by the way, for 48,000 subscribers. We are on the road to 50,000. It's going to be really fun. When we do hit that number, go check out the Champion Mads channel if you haven't already. All right, the first deck list that we're going to take a look at today is from Ilkrosser JS. I'm so bad with the names, as always, from Great Britain, and he was playing Gholdengo at the Ice-T Hometown Pop-Up, and Gholdengo is a really fun Pokemon. When this came out, it was definitely something a lot of people were interested in playing. It hasn't really seen a ton of meta relevance, hasn't been like a top-tier strategy, but I really like this deck because it's playing the Metal Core Barrier and Perrserker, Galarian Perrserker package. This Pokemon is really, really fun. Galarian Perrserker, which came out again somewhat recently, has the Dig Up ability, and it also hits for 70 damage for 2 energy, so it can KO Oricorios. Nice to have it in your deck list for multiple reasons, but the ability allows you, once you evolve Galarian Meowth into Perrserker, you can pull 2 tool cards out of your discard pile and put them into your hand. Now, this works really well because Metal Core Barrier has an incredibly strong effect where it reduces damage taken by 50, so a very solid amount of damage reduction, but it gets discarded at the end of the turn. So Perrserker allows you to recycle those Metal Core Barriers and be able to use multiple, up to 4 in one game, which is really cool. That's a really strong effect. If you can chain together Metal Core Barriers over and over again, then things like Orthworm and Gholdengo are going to be able to survive. I'm sorry, I'm still sick. They're going to be able to survive for much longer, and that allows you to pile even more energies onto Gholdengo and then win the game by, attacking with Spending Rush and dealing a ton of damage. So it's definitely a fun strategy, not something that, we really ever saw that much, even in popularized Gholdengo decks when Gholdengo first came out, but it's a very fun strategy, and I think Perrserker and Metal Core Barrier certainly is something to, keep our eye on moving forward. I don't know if it'll end up being that common, but it's really cool to see. So this player here went 7-2 at this tournament, so a really great record with this combo here. He hit multiple Hydreigons and won those matchups, beat Suicune Baxcalibur, beat Steelix, lost to a Steelix, beat Ninetales, but then lost in top 8 to Akuma here, playing Baxcalibur and Suicune, which is, pretty much defined as kind of the number 1 deck right now in this current metagame. That's because it kind of got first place this past weekend. It's also the most popular deck, so I think a lot of people interpret it as a top deck, but a lot of strong Pokemon in the game. Ninetales is seeing more play, and Ninetales and and Baxcalibur and Xianpao are all Ice-type Pokemon, so in Pocket they're weak to Steel-type, and that's going to be really nice for Gholdengo, although the weakness doesn't apply to bench damage, but yeah, shout out to Gholdengo and this player here for playing this deck. Very, very cool. Next up is going to be one of my favorite ones that we're going to talk about in today's video. This is Tesla20 from Venezuela, playing a really fun lightning deck with Pikachu EXs. And, Pikachu EX kind of slept on. So this is going to be, Turbo Pikachu with starting planes, with Electric Generator, Lucky Ice Pops, and Oricorios. It's a really fun deck. It is an Oricorio deck at its core. So, most of the games you win here are going to be through Oricorio, but I think both Pikachu EXs, although they don't have a lot of HP, only 120 HP, are very fast-paced, aggressive Pokemon, and honestly, are pretty impressive Pokemon in terms of their damage output. So we have the original Pikachu EX with Circle Circuit, which hits for 90 damage if your bench is full. And then we have the Thunderbolt Pikachu from Shining Revelry that used to see a ton of play way back in the day, especially before Mega Pokemon. It does 150 damage, and then you discard all of the energies from it. But that's a lot of damage. Even in a metagame with a lot of Mega Pokemon with more than 150 HP, it's a really solid Pokemon. I think this deck probably got carried a little bit by Oricorio, but this Pikachu actually plays very similarly to Manectric. It's virtually kind of the same thing, but it's not a 3-prize Pokemon. It's got less HP, I know that. But it's a basic and it's got less HP, but it's a 2-prize Pokemon. It's not a 3-prize Pokemon. So theoretically, even if you did lead off with Pikachu, you could get that turn 2 90 damage out and kind of maybe outpace your opponent. This is definitely an underrated card, especially in a metagame where Suicune is so dominant. I think this Pikachu, honestly, is a good card into any Suicune lead, and I find that to be pretty cool. Also, Pikachu will one-hit KO Suicune, so it's a cool deck list. Kind of a throwback, which is why I wanted to highlight it. And we do have the Lucky Ice Pops and Starting Planes in there. That does boost Oricorio's HP, but also Pichu's and Pikachu's. So 140 is not too bad. But overall, this is definitely a deck more so about being really aggressive, or also taking KOs with Thunderbolt Pikachu, but also just being an Oricorio deck. This Tapu Koko is likely here for the Oricorio matchups if you do hit opposing Oricorios, but it also swaps to the bench, so you're able to attack with Tapu Koko and then go into Oricorio after you attack, and then hopefully you're safe that way, right? Oricorio definitely still a strong Pokemon. Not as many people playing it right now. Might have been definitely an advantage for this player who went 6-2 at this tournament. Lost to Dark Greninja and lost to Sleep Altaria, but beat Manectric, beat Sleep Manectric, beat Suicune twice, which does make sense, beat Charizard, again because of Oricorio, and then beat Melmetal, also probably because of Oricorio. So a really fun deck, not something that we've seen for a very long time. Neither of these Pikachus have been, common in the metagame for a long time, but it is really fun to see. It's a cool bit of a throwback deck, and 6-2 is a great record, and I think the Lightning type has so much going for it all across the board. We're not even playing Zeraora in this deck, but between Pichu or Oricorio, there's just a lot of things that you can do with the Lightning archetype. Just a lot of good stuff going for Lightning. I wonder if, because the teaser has, I guess, said that Mega Lucario might be coming in the next set. Maybe the Fighting type Renaissance comes. But for now, Lightning type is definitely one of the top tier archetypes in the game. Shout out to Tesla. Next up is going to be Yuki, who I believe beat Tesla. No, this is a different player. Okay, but this is also a Melmetal player had a 5-2 record at the Pregio tournament pocket number 6. Melmetal is an interesting Pokemon. Again, with Metal Core Barrier and, of course, the Amass Meltan, this thing is kind of an issue. It's really difficult to get around Melmetal. The thing about Melmetal is that you kind of have to go second. That way, Meltan can Amass, use that attack, generate additional energies to Melmetal, and then you can start attacking on potentially your second or third turn. I think that Melmetal EX is a very strong Pokemon. If we ever did get any true Metal-type acceleration, and I know we do have it in Dialga and Earthworm, but if we had a way to generate additional metal energies, that might be too good, considering the metal Pokemon that are in the metagame. Yeah, Metal hits like a truck. 150 if you have a tool card attached to it, and 170 HP. Again, you can use Steel Apron Steel Apron's also kind of underrated because it makes you immune to status conditions. So against the sleep decks, you can Steel Apron the Meltan and actually be in a really good position into some of those sleep decks, because they're really not going to do much to you. You're also hitting for super effective on a variety of different Pokemon that are common in the metagame right now, like Chien-Pao, like Altaria. Steel type is actually becoming more of a an offensive type than it is like a defensive type, but it has a lot of defensive support in the game, which is why I think that so many Steel type decks, whether it's Scizor or Steelix or I guess Melmetal as we see here, are actually somewhat viable decks in the metagame. There's just been enough support given to the Steel/Metal type archetype over the last few expansions that these decks really are legit. They're kind of dangerous. Now, I don't know what we're going to be getting in the future, but Metal Core Barrier is a big deal. Steelix is good. Again, Perrserker that we saw in the Gholdengo deck. They've been giving a lot of love to the Steel type archetype. And I know Melmetal is not a necessarily new card, but it is a Pokemon that can win games and has been able to win games ever since Metal Core Barrier came into the metagame. It's a 50 damage reduction. So Meltan, rather, with 60 HP means that your opponent has to hit you on turn 2 for 110 damage, which not a lot of decks are going to be able to do. So Meltan should be able to survive the turn with Metal Core Barrier, and then you can get into Melmetal and kind of sweep through from there. We're playing one non-EX Melmetal, mostly, again, just so that we don't auto-lose to Oricorio. even though it's not that common in the metagame. And then we have double Lucky Ice Pops, as well as PCL. This deck does not want to lose to the sleep stuff, the sleep scam stuff, which I really do. I respect that. I honestly do respect that. So shout out to Melmetal. This is a deck that people play from now and then. And honestly, I don't know if we've ever really seen Melmetal get to like the very top of a large tournament, but it definitely places somewhat well every now and then, either at our tournaments on the weekends or these smaller tournaments throughout the week. It's honestly a very respectable deck. It feels similar to Venusaur, like Mega Venusaur, but it's steel type and it's a little different, but the concept of the deck is pretty much the same, where you kind of use your base evolution to generate energies, and then you have a really strong Pokemon, hopefully to sweep through your opponent. But yeah, shout out to Yuki, 0-1, 5-2 record, very respectable. Shout out to Melmetal. Next up at the Dark League pop-up is going to be Venusaur. Speaking of Venusaur, this is Pedro Luis Renmo Soares. His full name is out here. Shout out to this guy from Brazil. 6-3 record with Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur, just like Melmetal, kind of sees a little bit of play here or there, and sometimes it pops up and it just wins. It's really a strong strategy. I think we had a Venusaur like in top 4 or top 8 at our tournament at least once in the last few weeks. So it probably deserves to see more play. We beat Steelix, Greninja, Decidueye, Manectric, Altaria, Suicune, Mawile, and we lost to we lost to Manectric, and we lost to Greninja Oricorio. So, Venusaur, it's not going to really be able to beat Oricorio decks, especially Greninja Oricorio with the healing and then the extra damage that Greninja can provide. That's certainly going to be tough, and then losing to Altaria is unfortunate, as well as Manectric, which might have been playing, real Satoshi might have been playing an Oricorio in his deck list. But yeah, let's take a look, because Venusaur, again, very similar to Melmetal, just a really big Pokemon. Hard to get through it. Venusaur doesn't play a lot of healing per se. It does play Lillian, it plays Erica, and I guess this deck is playing one Malasada, one Lucky Ice Pop, and a PCL. So I guess there's a bunch of healing in this deck, but Venusaur itself doesn't heal at all. It's mostly about kind of getting lucky with sleep coin flips and just sort of hitting for 120 damage every turn, which is a fair amount. Melmetal, they're very comparable strategies, I would say. The thing about Venusaur, as opposed to Melmetal, is that it's a stage 2 Pokemon that requires the middle evolution. So you kind of are always going on turn 3, whereas Melmetal sometimes can at least get up and going on turn 2. It's just not always necessarily that strong. It's not as strong as Venusaur is on turn 2, of course. Or it's stronger. Venusaur can't even attack on turn 2. But yeah, we all like Venusaur. We think this deck is fun. I think Venusaur, it's a very straightforward strategy. It's one of the few Pokemon in the game. And I know we just saw Melmetal, which is another example of that, but one of the few Pokemon in the game where you can build a deck just with only Venusaur and it can just win you the game. It's one of those funny things where, like, technically, you can have like 2 Melmetals and your opponent would have to go through both of them. But when you play Venusaur, it really is all about just the single Venusaur and hoping that's enough to win games. You're not going to like the Charizard matchup, that's for sure. But everything else, especially into like Suicune, right? Because you don't have any bench Pokemon. Suicune decks traditionally struggled with Venusaur. It was kind of one of the first archetypes that was kind of a true counter to Suicune. However, it's certainly going to struggle into a lot of things in these Venusaur decks. They don't really play anything for Oricorio. Theoretically speaking, we do have Poison. So between the Poison and the fact that like Oricorio is never going to deal enough damage to KO us, the game either will end in Oricorio going down to Poison, or likely, more than likely enough, any Pokemon that they play that's not Oricorio that can deal damage should be able to come out with the win. So it's kind of a tough matchup for Venusaur. But yeah, it's fun to see. I'm glad somebody was playing it. Shout out to Pedro, 6-3. Shout out to Venusaur, one of my favorite Pokemon. One of my favorite Megas in general. Venusaur is always my favorite Kanto starter. Next up is going to be Baguspa, I think, from Indonesia. 9-2 record at Highlights Blazing Inferno. Guzzlord Indeedee. So, Guzzlord's still out here. We've talked about it a little bit over the last few weeks. It's still out here winning games. It's still a threat. You got the grindcore early game going. You got Heavy Helmet on 170 HP Guzzlord with starting planes. That's 190. Double Indeedee heals, double Lucky Ice Pop. It's a very strong deck. Now, again, at first glance, you'd be like, well, again, we're not really playing anything for Oricorio, and that is sort of the issue with Guzzlord, is that you don't really want to play anything for Oricorio, because it makes your deck substantially worse. You never really want Indeedee in the active, which is kind of also an inherent inconsistency about this deck. And also Guzzlord, if you go first, is just not that strong. That is sort of the deal with it. But it does highlight one of the stranger interactions in the game right now, which is that Chien Pao, you would think Chien Pao EX is used, it does 130 to a bench Pokemon. You would really think that Pokemon would stop things like Indeedee from seeing play, but ever since Starting Plains was released, Starting Plains, which is weird because Suicune also plays Starting Plains, I think, most of the time. Starting Plains protects Indeedee and a lot of these bench-sitting Pokemon from getting one-hit KO'd by Chien-Pao. So, like, for things like Suicune and Baxcalibur, like, they're gonna have to go through Guzzlord. Like, that's just the inherent thing about it. Now, you know, the elephant in the room is that Guzzlord here, even though it discards energies with Grindcore, Baxcalibur can generate additional energies every turn. So it's not really that big of an issue. Yeah, I think Guzzlord is a strong deck. It's just one of those few Pokemon that is like truly unique. It's not like anything else that we have in Pokemon Pocket, and hopefully Guzzlord remains relevant for quite some time. There is sort of the Poison Naganadel aggro dark Ultra Beast deck that people play, which I still think is very good because Naganadel is very good. But when it comes to a deck that is like centered around Guzzlord, this is kind of the way that we play it right now. Very similar to Steelix. This is effectively the same deck, just with Guzzlord instead of Steelix. Now, the thing with Steelix as opposed to Guzzlord is that it can beat Oricorio very easily because of Onyx and whatnot. But Guzzlord's still very, very strong. Anyway, shout out to, what happened? Yeah, shout out to Baguspa, I think is how you say this, Baguspa. I'm not sure, from Indonesia. Shout out to him. Next up is going to be Itachi. This is a Mega Mawile deck. This is a 19 trainer Mawile deck that went 5 and 3 and 1 at this tournament here. So lost to Venusaur and Melmetal, unfortunately, and then lost to Greninja Oricorio. That kind of makes sense. You know, Greninja Oricorio is going to beat a lot of these decks that we're highlighting. But again, not many people playing Oricorio in this metagame. I know that the decks that we've highlighted have ended up losing to Greninja Oricorio because it's a very strong counter meta deck. But beating Steelix, beating a couple Suicunes, beating Manectric. Honestly, this is a strategy that is not weak. You know, 19 trainer Mawile is very dangerous. Metal Core Barrier, Lucky Ice Pops. You know, basically the thing with Mawile, it's an incredibly strong Pokemon. And unless your opponent has a way to just kind of beat it through things like Oricorio, then you can't beat it. Like oftentimes, it's just gonna roll through the game. It's got 170 HP, just like Guzzlord with starting planes. That's 190, but we get access to Metal Core Barrier on top of Lucky Ice Pop. This thing's gonna just ramp out of control. If Mega Mawile 19 trainer goes second and you're not playing Oricorio, you have a very high chance of losing. So it's one of those strange decks. Mostly all 19 trainer decks have lost to Oricorio. But, you know, that's why Oricorio is important, because decks like this, whether it's in today's metagame with Mawile or in the past, are going to become too good. They're just like they're too solid. Like we saw it with like 19 trainer Articuno with Misty back in the day, which was a top deck of a particular season. And that might have been before Oricorio. So again, Oricorio is very important to stop certain things like this from happening. And Mega Mawile is not a weak Pokemon, like I said. It's just you don't want to play more than one Pokemon because then Sabrina counters Mawile, and then you don't want to play, you know, anything, of course, to deal with Oricorio. So you lose to Oricorio. So it's one of those decks. But shout out to Oricorio for not subjecting us to a metagame full of 19 trainer Mawiles, because that really would be probably one of the more prominent decks in the metagame. But it's interesting to see nonetheless. Shout out to Itachi from Chile. 5 and 3 record. Mawile. I haven't seen Mawile in a while. Next up is going to be Angel ST at the Power League number 2, and this is that Greninja Decidueye deck. So this popped up. It was one of the more popular decks sometime, I think, in the second week of the season. It's definitely not a bad deck. It's one of the more niche ways that you can play Greninja and Shingling together. Most people are playing the Dark Greninja version, but Decidueye Greninja is strong. This is a very, very good deck list. I like it. Now, this is cool. What's cool about this deck list, and which I got it wrong when we first highlighted it, is that this deck only plays water energies, because there's no reason to play grass energies in this deck. You know, you don't need to Razor Leaf with Decidueye. That means you cannot skill dive with Rowlet, but honestly, it doesn't matter. You know, it just doesn't. So Greninja here to deal damage, and then we can snipe the bench with Decidueye. It's a really strong deck. One of my favorite things that's been in the metagame. It kind of fell off a little bit this week, but I did want to highlight it just because somebody played it, and I think they got first place. They did. They won this tournament, by the way. So a first place Greninja Decidueye. This is Angel ST from Greece, 7 and 2 record beat. Of course, the Greninja Oricorio here, double Hydreigon, Dark Greninja, and this makes sense, right? So grass type decks probably not going to appreciate Decidueye very much. Lost to Steelix, lost to Blaziken, all that stuff makes sense, but a very, very good deck in the metagame, one that's going to be well positioned into Hydreigon, and this player beat 3 Hydreigon. So it's kind of a counter meta pick in its own right, but a very cool deck. So anyway, shout out to Angel, and shout out to Greninja Decidueye. Something to keep your eye on. Have you guys been hitting this deck and ranked? That's something that I'm curious about. It's definitely one of my favorites this season. Lastly is going to be Eosora, who went 10 and 1. So an incredible record here at the Yash tournament from Indonesia, playing Jolteon. So a 10 and 1 record for this player. Made it all the way to round 11, but was undefeated up until round 11. Beat basically every other top deck in the metagame. Beat Greninja Decidueye, beat Hydreigon, beat Suicune, beat normal Decidueye, beat Charizard, in fact. So Jolteon really ending up being a really substantial Pokemon. And I think we've known this. I don't think it's like too big of a surprise that Jolteon is like a top tier meta contender. He's not playing the promo Electrike, which is interesting for sure. But Double E Generator, Jolteon, Manectric, it's something that we saw. Definitely, I think when Manectric first came out, a lot of people played it with Jolteon. Wasn't as successful as some other variants, but I still think Jolteon's a really strong Pokemon, and I know it's a big fan favorite. When I saw this get like really a great record, like I think it's like top 4, top 8 at this tournament, but went 10-0 with Jolteon, like it just goes to show that, certain things are sort of forgot about, but if, anybody ends up bringing them back up into a tournament and having a good run, they can definitely surprise you. I think we've had a couple of Jolteons in day 2 of the last few weeks of our PMPT tournaments as well. So a very cool deck. Shout out to Jolteon. I know we all love Jolteon. Electromagnetic Wall and Boosted Evolution. These abilities are very unique, very, very cool. And hopefully the evolution stuff remains relevant into future seasons because it is kind of one of my favorite things in Pokemon Pocket. All very unique Pokemon, and Boosted Evolution was a really great thing for things like Jolteon, but also for Leafeon. And as we've seen in previous seasons, Leafeon continues to be a very relevant deck. So, a very cool deck. Shout out to Jolteon, man. Shout out. Again, big shout out to AOE? I don't know how to say the name. I apologize. From Indonesia. Love the deck list. Absolutely love it. All right, guys. There it is. It's a quick one today, just a quick video. I wanted to get this out there, highlight some of these players, highlight some of these decks as we do on Wednesday, and then get prepared because that new set trailer is coming out soon. I'm very excited about it. This weekend is the Invitational. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Who is the champion of the second season of PMPT tournaments? And then as we go into B3, it'll be the startup of the season 3 of our Pocket Mads Pocket Tournament series, which is going to be fun. I always love it. I'm really happy with the team and everybody involved in the tournaments. It's a ton of fun, so I'm excited. Anyway, that's the video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below, what did you think of these decks? What other decks do you think are underrated right now in the metagame? I know we're at the end of the season, so some things, maybe they'll pop back up here in the next few days. Maybe they won't. Who knows? We'll have to see. Yeah, there we go, guys. All right, let's wrap it up. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.